And you know, one of the things that has been said here and said elsewhere is that the first thing to know about being awareness itself is that you already are, right? And then once you know that, and you can check that out anytime, like I have said here, all you have to do is ask yourself, am I aware? And when you ask yourself, am I aware, your attention goes to the awareness and the question gets answered. It's an obvious answer. Yes, I am aware. So now you have checked it and you discovered the truth that it is the case that you are aware, and it is the case that you are awareness simply because once you check it out and see that you are aware, the next thing that you can do is notice that without the awareness there is no you, right? So you check it out and you say, well, I am aware, right? And then you notice that awareness is the bottom line. Without the awareness there is no me to be aware. So this whole thing takes 5 minutes, right? And then after you know, unless you get caught up in some mental stuff, right? And if you do get caught up in some mental stuff, then as I have said here before, you know, we can have a debate and you'll lose because I got all the evidence and you don't have any. And if we interact about it, you'll just find yourself at a dead end, right? Because you can't argue with reality. You can't argue with the truth. It's obvious. So if you don't go through that, you know, if your mind allows you to get this far, right, then within 5 minutes you can discover the truth of yourself as awareness. That just takes 5 minutes, right? But then the question is, okay, but that's not the experience I'm having all the time. The experience I'm having all the time is the one that is aware, the one that is the thinker, the one that is not the awareness, or seems not to be the awareness, because it's not living the life of the awareness, right? It's living the life of the person. It's living the life of that conditioned being. It's living the life of the person that has the habits. It's living the life of the person that has the emotions and the issues and the conflicts, right? And the addictions and the neurosis and all that stuff. So yeah, so if you come to that conclusion that takes 5 minutes, then the next part of it is not so simple, because the next part of it is if it is the case that I am awareness, and it's also the case that that's not the experience I'm having, then what's happening, right? Then what's happening? And what's happening is that the you that you think you are, which got established really early on in the game, about 2 years old, right? The terrible twos. The you that you think you are that got established very early on in the game has been who you've been being since then, right? And that you who you were early on in the game had a brain and a mind that was serving its purpose. And the brain and the mind's purpose that it was serving was to have that you that you thought you were survive, right? So now we know through examination and inquiry that you learned that you were very early on wasn't really who you are, right? That you who you learned very early on who wasn't really who you are, but you didn't know that then, right? You thought it was who you really were. And so the mind and the brain accepted that that's the you that you thought you were, and it started to develop programming to have that you survive. So then how does that you survive? How does a personality or a person survive in the world, right? Because from the viewpoint of a person or a personality, they're separated from all the other persons in the world. They're separate from the world, right? And so they're dealing with all of that reality and all of the threats that that reality presents to them, right? You're also identified with the body. So here you are, you're identified with the physical body, and you're identified with the person or the personality. And so the mind and the brain serve the purpose of surviving the body and that personality, right? So the way it survives the body is it will go into an alarm state whenever anything appears that seems to threaten the physical body, right? And so the brain's wired up that way, and that's a good thing, right? Because if you are standing on the curb and a bus is coming, you're not going to step off the curb in front of the bus. So that system works. And so therefore, most of us survive physically because the program's working. That's why we're still here, right? Now the other part of the program is having you survive as a person. So there's the physical body that you think you are, and then there's the personality that you consider yourself to be. That personality that you learned you were very early on in life when you got language and somebody told you your name and you looked in the mirror and somebody told you that's you, like that. So this idea you have of yourself as a person or a personality, how does that survive? And that's not physical, right? And so its survival is the survival of the ego. Its survival is the survival of the mind. Its survival is the survival of the thinker, the one who's thinking the thoughts. And you know, to cut to the chase, the way that personality survives is it survives by dominating and avoiding domination. It survives by being in control. It survives by looking good and avoiding looking bad, right? If you look at how you survive as a person, isn't this the case, right? That's how it survives. It survives by being comfortable and avoiding discomfort. Now that's an interesting thing, right? That who you and I are as a person or a personality survives, according to the brain and the mind, survives by being comfortable and avoiding discomfort and avoiding pain, right? And seeking pleasure, right? Avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. So if you look at your behavior and you look at your life, what I just described describes how you live, right? You live to avoid pain, you live to seek pleasure, you live to avoid being dominated and dominate. You live to look good and avoid looking bad, right? Come on. That's the way it is. This is truth telling, right? And so that's how you survive as a personality, right? And and people who are identifying themselves as that personality, they don't have any problem with that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's me or you. It's going to be me or you, right? And it's going to be me if I have anything to say about it, right? And as far as looking good is concerned, you know, I'm going to play the game, right? I'll get plastic surgery. I'll make sure I get good makeup if I'm a woman. You know, if I'm really obsessed about looking good, you know, I'll do whatever it takes, you know. I'll become a workout fanatic. I'll get a personal trainer, like that. So that's the program's running, right? Now, if one of the aspects of that program is to avoid pain and discomfort and seek pleasure, right, and seek comfort, that part of the program will screw you for sure. Why? Can you learn and can you grow and stay comfortable? Check it out. Can you learn and can you grow and stay comfortable? No. Therefore, your ability to learn, you know, I mean, you'll put up with a little bit of discomfort. You'll put up with a little looking stupid or ignorant, but not too much, right? You'll put up with a little discomfort, but not too much. And so that then gives you what the limitations are in terms of what you can learn. And the other thing is, can you be in life as a person and a personality when part of your program, a major part of your program, is to seek comfort and avoid pain? Can you be in life? Is it not the case that life, the way life is there is pain in life, right? You got a physical body, there's going to be pain. You're living in a world of circumstances, things are going to happen, there's going to be pain, right? So here, there are two things that the program says can't happen or can only happen in a very limited sense. First of all, you can't learn much because that's uncomfortable, right? Because you have to not know to learn, and nobody likes that. You want to look good. You want to look like you already know, right? So you can't do much learning, and then you can't be in life too much because the way it is in life is uncomfortable a lot of the time, right? So you can't be in life too much. So where are you if you can't be in life too much? if you're not actually present for life, what are you experiencing? Go ahead, you said it.
In the past, you're not experiencing reality of what's happening.
You're experiencing a head trip, right? You're living in the world that's in your head. And in the world that's in your head, right, you can avoid, right, part of living in the world that's in your head that will play out in the way you live your life, right, is you'll navigate your way in life to eliminate pain and suffering, and navigate your way in life to increase pleasure and comfort, right? That's the way the program will play. And in your head, the way that'll play in your head is the way, for example, I was talking to one of the instructors here about this class, and I said to the instructor, you know, well, sometimes I can't make it to the class and I need people to sub for me. Would you be interested? And this person said to me, oh no, that class starts at 8:30. I don't do 8:30. Okay? That was the program, right? That was the program. I don't do 8:30. So anything that happens before 8:30 is not part of her world. You understand? But you have to understand how this plays out, right? Because watch. If you and I were to sit down and we did a exercise, and the exercise that we did was we would sit down and take a pencil and paper and write down all the things that we wanted to have be true for us in our lives, right? We'd write down we want to have a healthy body, wouldn't we? We'd write down we want to eat healthy, wouldn't we? We'd write down we want to exercise in a way that gives us, you know, longevity and good health and good energy, wouldn't we? We'd write down we want to meditate, right? If you understand what meditation is, well, we definitely want to meditate, don't we, right? We'd write down that we would want to deal with whatever we needed to deal with ourselves to be able to get along with people. Wouldn't we write that down? Right? We'd make a list of all these things to do, right? And then we'd look at the list, and then we can look and see, okay, in order to have a healthy diet, what would I need to do that, right? I would start to educate myself about the right foods to eat, right? Wouldn't I? Right? I would start planning to buy the right foods, right? And planning my diet, start to pay attention to how big the portions are that I'm eating. That's all the stuff that I would do, right? And then for the physical exercise, I would start planning a program, you know, where would I go to exercise, what exercises would I do that would work to give me the body that I want and the health that I want, right? We do all that. And we do all this with all the things on the list, right? For having the relationships work, right? I might get into psychotherapy, right, and get some help to understand what's not working for me so I could start to make adjustments to the way I behave, right? We make that list. And then if we got that whole list together and we say, okay, now we got it all figured out. We got a program, right? We got a program of how to live our lives to optimize physical well-being, psychological well-being, emotional well-being, right? And you could add more and more to the list. How could I be financially successful? And then put all the activities you would have to do that, right? And we live in a world where we have a tremendous amount of information available, don't we? I mean, you could do some research on the internet and Google, you know, right eating and Google financial success and learn all these things about how to succeed in all these areas, and you could write all that down and have a full program of how to have your life be successful, and this would end you up being healthy and happy with good relationships, right? This is all doable. We could sit down and have this activity, right? And then after we did all that, right, and then we'd say, okay, so starting tomorrow, we're going to put this plan into effect. We're going to start doing all the activities that we have listed here in order to realize the results that we want, right? Now, what would happen? Now, you've all done this to some extent, haven't you? Right? In some area of your life. And what happens?
Something else comes up.
Yeah, what comes up?
Your mind makes it easy.
Yeah, what comes up is your mind. What comes up is your ego. What comes up is your program. You know why? Because all the things that I just mentioned would mean that you would have to be uncomfortable because you'd be changing a lot of your habits, wouldn't you?
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard to do that because the mind wants to do what it knows what it's familiar with. It wants to repeat the patterns, right? And so if we did that exercise, right, I could bet my house on your failure and be very comfortable with that. I could bet my house on your failure, especially if we did something that had all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because you would have to become a different person tomorrow, right? And that ain't gonna happen, right? And that's the most extreme version of this, right? But if you look at just the limited versions of this, right, in terms of things like, you know, coming to this class, for example, right, coming to this class, if you've been coming to the class, one of the things that I have preached, right, is you've got to establish a pattern of behavior when it comes to practicing meditation. You have to keep exposing yourself to the learning associated with it to stay motivated, right? And you have to deal with your tendency not to do that, right? And you've heard me say here when people come to the class that are new, one of the things I tell them in the very beginning is you're going to fail at this. I think that's the most important thing to let people know. You know, you're going to fail at this. And the reason you're going to fail at this is because you're here to try it, right? And you're going to make, and how many times have people come to the class when I said to them, have you ever experienced meditation? And they say, yeah, I tried it, right? But I didn't continue to do it. Always, always, that's the answer, right? What does that say? What does that say? What does it say about the condition that humanity is living their life in? What's that say about the condition that most of us are living their life in? What it says, right, if you have the audacity to see the truth, it says that you're not living your life, the program is. You're not living your life, your mind is. And that program in mind will not let you do anything that violates the program too much. It won't let it. It won't let you do that, right? So is that the end of is that it? You know what I'm saying? Is that it? Is it the actual truth and the actual reality that it's not possible for you to do anything except what that program allows you to do? So if it's possible to do the things that would have your life work, right? What would it take, given what I just said is the case? What would it take?
Clear the program.
Clear the program?
You have to work on clearing the program.
Yeah. Well, the only problem with working on clearing the program with that would be the highest violation of the program. Right? That'd be the highest violation of the program, right? So what would it take to do that?
Become awareness and leave the person.
What's that?
Become awareness and leave the person.
Okay, so if you consider that to be the answer, just become awareness and not be the person, right? Then do that tomorrow and let me know how you. Yeah, if you consistently do something and create a new pattern, right? If you consistently do something and create a new pattern, that will replace the old pattern, right? If you consistently do something and replace the pattern. That's the challenge. Meditation is just one thing, right on our list. That's just one thing, right? So that's one thing, and if you could succeed at that, it might give you some clues about how to succeed at the rest of the things, right? So what does it take, you know, if you're a practitioner of meditation, what does it take to have a meditation practice that you do consistently without fail? You're probably better off not even attempting to change anything in the direction of having your life work if you're not willing to deal with what you're up against realistically, and you're not willing to deal with what it's going to take to succeed in dealing what there is to deal with realistically, right? What's determining who you are and what you do? Your circumstances?
Sometimes it does. If you have a job, you have to put.
Well, but then the question comes: can you have a job and still do what works in your life?
Yes.
Yeah. See, the mind's going to use any little crack to get in, right? Well, wait a minute. If you have a job, you got to go to work. You got to be realistic, right? Well, is it possible? Is it possible to have a job and live a life that's workable?
Sure.
Yeah. So that's not an issue.
No.
That's not an issue.
How can we change what we aren't?
What's that?
How do we change what we aren't? we're not this person. So how do you change? We're trying to change something that's non-existent.
Well, the way you change what you're not is to stop acting as if you are that. Which means that when that runs, you don't run with it.
And to understand what caused that from the beginning.
Well, you can understand, yeah, I mean, that's part of it. You understand how that worked, how that got put together. And then you can go back and you can start to actively do things that will literally start to reprogram or unwire it and rewire it, right? So that's one thing that you can do. And that's one of the things that I've been recommending here recently with this business of doing the presencing work, right? So there are things that you can actually do. But as I was saying to you, to do that is to take on the dragon, right? To do that, because that you're going directly to the source of the problem if you do that work, right? And so when you go to do that, you're going to see the best moves your mind can make. You will come up against the best moves your mind can make. And your mind can make some good moves. It can have you get physically sick to stop you. And for a lot of people, that's what happens. They get physically sick to stop them from going any further. So you see, so when you look at this, you have to ask yourself, you know, what's it going to take, right? And what it's going to take is it's going to take, you have, and this is what I have said here many times, right? Two things. First of all, you have to see reality, right? And if you see reality, the reality that you see is the life that you would live, not awake, the life that you would live to just be a part of the way humanity is in general, right, isn't worth living. If you see the truth, you'll see that, just like Socrates said, an unexamined life isn't worth living. If you see that truth, that the life that a person lives when they live from their mind, when they live from their ego, when they live from their habits, when they live from the past, is not a life worth living. It's not a life worth living because you're not even in your life. You're in your head. That's not very exciting. That's not very fulfilling, right? So that's one thing you have to understand, right? And then having understood that, you're willing to do anything to escape from that reality. That has to be the case. You're willing to do anything to escape from that reality. Now, if you're willing to do anything to escape from that reality, you won't actually have to do anything to escape from that reality, you know, like do some really eccentric thing. All you have to do is deal with your own mind. That's the anything. To deal with your own mind, right? But to deal with your own mind means that you have to establish that you are not your mind. You have to establish that you are not the voice in your head, and you have to establish that a realization, understanding, and an awareness that if you watch that run, it runs the way I said it runs. It runs toward comfort, it runs towards pleasure, it runs to avoid anything uncomfortable, right? It runs to look good, it runs to dominate and avoid domination, right? So if you know you're not that, then you have to orient yourself in such a way where you can be aware of that when it goes to run. See, if you identify with that, the game's over, right? Because then there's no place to see it from. You're being it. Like I said, that woman said, I don't do 8:30. She didn't say, you know, I have a voice in my head that says that don't get up before 9 o'clock. She didn't say that. She said, I don't do 8:30. Not my mind doesn't do 8:30, right? And once you're identified with it, there's no chance, right? There's no place to be but as that, and so that will determine what you do. So the first thing you have to do is see that you're not that, so you can see that. And when you see that and you see it run, and you watch that it is running the way I said it's running, and you watch that that is not going to give you the life that you want, it's not going to give you well-being, right? Then your awareness of that allows you to not identify with it, and then to look to see, okay, how do I relate to it in a way where I can get away from its domination of me? How do I relate to it in a way that I can have it stop running my life? How do I get away from it in a way that I can stop having myself get lost in identifying with it, right? And therefore I lose the potential that I have. How do I do that, right? Well, the first thing that people come up with, I know what I'll do. I'll resist it. I won't let it run my life, right? And then and the other thing that they do is they watch themselves fail. You know, they watch it continue to take over and have you do what it wants you to do. And then you feel bad about it and you feel guilty about it and you make yourself wrong about it. And that's exactly what the mind wants you to do, right? Because if that's what you do, right, you will then at some point give up and say, you know, this isn't for me. You know, I just can't do this. I might as well just realize that I took on too much here and just accept my little life the way it is and stay home more, watch a little more TV. Maybe I'll, you know, start enjoying some good wine. Right? That's what'll happen. As soon as you start trying and control it, as soon as you try and resist it, right? Then what'll happen is you'll start feeling bad because it's stronger than you are, right? You'll start feeling bad about that. And that's working consistent with the way it works to get you to give up. That's actually how it's having you give up, is by the voice in your head will say, here's a perfect example of what I just said. You open the refrigerator door in the middle of the night and you see this beautiful chocolate cake that got baked and it's sitting in the refrigerator. And the voice in your head says, go ahead. You know, come on. You know you want this. You know, just put your finger in the icing and taste it. That's all. You know, you just. And so, you go, okay, and you put your finger in the icing and you put it in your mouth and you taste it. And then the voice in your head goes, you shouldn't have done that. That's exactly how it works, you see? That's the voice. It's all the voice, right? It'll tempt you to do what you don't want to do, and then it'll punish you for having done it. It's all part of the program. That keeps you in line. That keeps you identified with the voice in your head. You understand? So then how do you deal with it? Whatever you resist persists. You've heard me say that if you've been around for a while, right? So if you resist the mind, if you resist your habits, if you resist the patterns that your brain runs, whatever you resist persists. Your resistance will cause them to continue to run, right? If you try and control them, you'll fail. So what do? This is where skillful means comes into play. What you do is you understand that the program that the mind and the brain is running is not your enemy. It's actually trying to get you to survive. It's trying to get who you thought you were to survive. The program is well intended. It's trying to do something good. It's not the enemy, right? And so if you understand that, oh, I see. So now I'm not going to resist it. I'm not going to think of it as being bad and wrong or the enemy. I am going to understand that it's a program that meant well. And so now when it runs, instead of trying to control it or resist it, I'll simply notice that it's running, right? And I won't try and control it. I'll just be aware of it. And by being aware of it, I'm riding the horse in the direction it's going now. And if you ride the horse in the direction it's going, you can control it, can't you? Right? And so now I'm going along with the way it is. And as I'm going along with the way it is, I can gradually start to re-educate it and start to relate to it like, you know, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, right? But it's not necessary anymore because I can see that I don't need to be that way, right? And so you're not trying to control anything, and you may even go along with it at certain points and notice that you did, but not make that wrong either, right? And so what happens is as soon as you start to dance with it instead of fight with it, right? You can then lead the dance. You can then lead the dance. And so in the middle of things that go on, for example, now you can open the refrigerator door and you see the voice in your head says, you know, go ahead, you know you want that, right? Now your relationship to that voice is not like, oh, you're bad, don't try and tempt me. No. Your relationship with the voice is, oh, I understand why you would want that because that tastes good and it's pleasurable and it's comfort food. It'll help me not feel so crazy. I understand that. But I really don't need that, right? Now there's a new opening for possibility there, and you're not fighting anything, right? And because of that new opening for possibility, you're able to close the refrigerator door. It's very subtle, right? Skillful means. You don't fight the way it is. You move with it. If you're dancing with somebody, right? If you're dancing with somebody, and you're going along with them, that's how you dance, isn't it? You go along with them, you move together, right? But as you're dancing with them, you can then make a move that they follow, can't you?
It's supposed to go that way.
Yeah. So this is how you can,
You lead too, huh, Christine?
well, if you're experienced dancers, you can actually trade the lead, can't you?
Sure.
You feel it, right? You feel when you're dancing with somebody that they start to move a certain way, you go with them, right? And then you're dancing that way for a while, and then you move a certain way and they go with you, right? Isn't that how dancing works? Right? So this is skillful means. This is how you get out of the conundrum of having your mind dictate your life. The first thing you have to do, obviously, is you have to identify the way of being and the actions that you need to take in order to have things become workable. You have to do that exercise.
And that itself is a practice.
That in itself is challenging, right? Because if the mind starts noticing that you're doing that exercise, you'll get very sleepy. One of the ways the mind has you now continue to do something that's going to cause it to be threatened, it'll have you go to sleep. You ever experience something that's going on that's very challenging, maybe a conversation with somebody that you're related to that's very challenging, and you notice that all of a sudden you get very sleepy? It's like, oh, can we talk later? I don't think I can continue. I'm really tired, right? That's the mind, right? Shutting you down, right? So you really have to understand the mind's got all kinds of ways of dealing with you. But if you understand that and you take it on and you're motivated, right, and you see the game of it, you know what I mean? Like, I want to see how I can stay present. I want to see how I can be aware of what's trying to run, right? I want to see how I can be aware of that. And I want to see how I can be related to that in a way that works, so I come out on the end doing what I want to do, being who I want to be. That's the game, right? And if you're interested in that, there's a lot that's being done today. There's leading edge work about this. That's the first thing you have to do in order to be able to deal with the way the mind is and the program is running is you've got to be present. You've got to be present. You've got to be here as the awareness, right? Otherwise, you're just going to identify with the mind, right? You got to be present. How do you get present? Well, that's where you can use meditation. That's where you can use yoga. That's where you can use that book that I suggested to you, right? But even doing that is going to be very difficult and challenging. But you can do it, you see. This is the thing, going back to what I said in the beginning. It is a real possibility. You can do it. Every human being has the ability to get free. Every human being has the ability to wake up. Why doesn't that happen for most people, right? Because the trance is so collectively happening. Do you know what I mean? The power of the trance, the power of the state of mind is so pervasive across humanity. One of the things that I was writing about the other day when I was writing about this is that we use all kinds of things to avoid emotional pain, don't we? Physical pain too. We use all kinds of things to do that. And a lot of the things that we use to do that have become institutionalized. What do I mean by that? Well, is not drinking alcohol institutionalized in this society? Right? It's like, it's not looked at like you're doing anything to avoid your experience, is it? No, it's looked at like, oh, come on. This is part of the good life.
Enhance it.
Yes, this is an enhancement. This is not a problem, right? And so that's the way it's presented commercially to people, right? And so people live in that delusion about it. And so everybody's self-medicating, but we don't call it that. We call it having a good time. Right? Everybody's self-medicating, but we don't call it that. We call it having a good time. Whether we're talking about alcohol and now pot, right? Because pot's going to become the new alcohol, right? Or cigarettes, where cigarettes is out. Cigarettes went out and pot came in, right? Cigarettes went out and vaping came in. Now vaping is understood. I don't know why it took people so long to understand that vaping was going to be a destructive thing physically.
I don't get that either.
Yeah. Oh no, it's better than smoking cigarettes. Really? You know, you're inhaling toxins the same way you're inhaling toxins to bring smoke into your lungs. How do you have it that that's a good idea, right? But you see how brainwashed people are? So now, now vaping is, that's on the out, right? So something will come in to replace that, right? Well, pot is already, they say that pot's not anywhere near as bad as smoking cigarettes, right? It's still bringing smoke into your lungs. That's the thing that you're like overlooking, right? So, see, if you wake up, you begin to see the truth about things, right? And you begin to understand that if you go along with these things, if you believe what the commercials tell you, then you will participate in your own demise. Then you will self-medicate. Then you will use things to distract yourself and to change your experience emotionally and psychologically, right? And if you look at the commercials that are out there right now, there's more and more available, right? Texting, smartphones, computers, video games, football, television, entertainment. When I was a kid, there were 3 channels on the TV, right? Now there's 300 channels on the TV. So now you don't have to, it's not a matter of I'm going to turn the TV on because there's something I want to watch. No, I'll turn it on and find something. I got 300 channels. How the hell do you escape this? Right? So it goes back to the beginning of what I said. The first thing you have to do is understand what's really happening here and what's really at stake here, which is your life. You have to understand that. And the understanding of that will allow you to wake up and see the truth of what's going on and to maintain the motivation to get yourself out of that mess. That's the ball game. Any questions?
It just boils down to like the mind has to understand that the mind can't be trusted.
The mind can't understand anything.
The mind has to have a concept that
The mind can't have any concept. The mind's a program. Right? And then you just make a left turn. So I dare you. I dare you to sit down and make a list of everything that you would need to do to change your life and live a healthy life and be conscious. I dare you. And then see what happens. Have a good day.